Let me ask you this. Do you believe, or do you have any thoughts on the concept of generational trauma? Because, and just as a prelude to your answer on that, there's an interesting idea. It's in spirituality. It's in mental health circles as well. That, and in Buddhism, as you get deeper with the practice, these things come up. Like all your repressed traumas, your deepest fears, your shadow side in Jungian terms, over a deep, intense practice, these things come up and must be faced and addressed, right? And part of the enlightenment process is fully dealing with all of that. Because if there's any shadow sides to your personality, these things are holding you back, these things are not accepting, these things are repressing, these things are not facing reality. And so, enlightenment is a total oneness with life itself, and all those blockages must be cleared out. And so there's this notion that, in old Buddhist cultural references, they would talk about multiple lives, past lives, the karma from past lives. Today, in the scientific era, we might talk about it in terms of generational trauma, that you have these genetic and epigenetic sort of hereditary things that are passed on. We all come from long lines of broken people, right? Long lines of broken motherfucking people. And we carry within us some of that pain, some of that hurt, and it manifests in a bunch of different ways. I don't know exactly what to think about that. I know there is some scientific research that does show victims of the Holocaust, victims of slavery, victims of genocide have down the generational lines a genetic sort of encoding of that trauma. So scientifically, there is some validation of this, not a woo-woo idea that you can pass on biologically, you could pass on trauma. And so it's interesting to think about doing the spiritual and mental health work, not only to overcome your own individual trauma, or in Buddhist terms, process your own karma, but to try to clear out generational trauma within yourself. And ideally even create a new path forward for those that come after you, sort of breaking the cycle. So yeah, what are your thoughts on generational trauma? Do you have any thoughts on that at all? I mean, especially in the addiction world?
Well, I would say multiple factors, especially in my experience with child welfare, because there's the case where, there's the old files that they have, and you would have a file of the name of the person with the last name where they were the child. And then years later, they were now the parent that was in the system with a child that was getting taken away. Just a physical example of representation of it. But so for generational trauma, what I remember in all my sociology classes and my book learning, and then just my experience in life and what I know and have read and listened to from people, is that one of the biggest factors is not quite what happens to you, but what the response and what the fix was. Because it's almost like, in a way, like you break a bone, and if it heals improperly, that's even worse somehow, because it's the longer amount of effects. So, like, my example would be is that you have something like the Holocaust that occurs, just a truly horrific event of brutalization of people, and there was help for for Jews and their sanctuaries, and they stayed very close together, and they kept their identity together, and they bonded in this sort of survival way, and not just surviving, but surviving as us, as Jewish people, with their faith, with their culture, with everything like that.
And it fed in deeply into their history of persecution,
Now let's look at the flip side of something horrific that happened that was alleviated in a bad way. You look at the Native American genocide of everything that happened to them, and instead of them being rescued or them surviving with their cultural identity, there was all this weird assimilation crap. They were put on these, they were put on the the reservations,
boarding schools,
where their identity was kind of stolen, or it was just like empty. and there was nothing for them to hang on to. There was no goal in mind. There was, or a lot of it was like underwhelming, or it was a facade of actual help. And in the dysfunction of the healing process has led to the generational trauma of like these factors that keep, because it's one thing to be impacted by a blunt force. It's almost like to teach a man to fish or give him fish. It's one thing to be hit by a nasty thing that occurs to you and you're trying to like heal from the effects. It's another thing to be hit by it and then someone be like, you know how you heal that? You pour salt in the wound. Like someone teaches you a way to heal that actually makes it worse, or just exacerbates it. And so what I would say as far as like generational trauma, now the easy answer is an amalgamation of like, you know, sociological, nature, nurture, all those factors that go into it. You know, like just living. It's like what I say is that like, you know, as far as alcoholism, like if it's a gene thing, you could also just say that like, well, living in an alcoholic home is chaotic and disheartening to the soul, which can lead to alcoholism. Like it doesn't have to be like a brain chemical. It could just be like being raised up in that could lead to it. But I would say it's like a generational thing. There's weird things that happen with family as far as culture and what's accepted. Like I'll give you like an example of the idea of what people think about money, for instance. So like I can give you an example just personally. So like me and my uncle, when he's my dad's twin brother, when he moved from Texas to Omaha, back to Texas, there was like some house stuff that he did. And there was a thing where he had to put up a retaining wall. And as the icing on goes, we were like, we're not hiring people to do this. YouTube University, and we'll figure it out. And so essentially we put up this retaining wall. And in the process of doing it, spending a weekend doing it, he paying you and like pizzas and stuff like that, we saved him about $12,000 in doing that. There was never a talk of like, you're going to pay us for the work we did over these like 2 weekends, or like it wasn't even thought up as something. Yes. In another family,
it's communism in the family unit.
How dare you bring communism? No, but the idea though is that in another family, you wouldn't even get to that point. There would be talks before you did any of this. If we're going to do this, we're going to talk about money, or afterwards use it as a bartering thing. It's like, hey, my friends are coming into town. They need a place to stay. Remember when we did that thing for you? You always keep in your back of your mind, like how your effort and money, how that's kept in your mind, how that's treated. Now, to go into the addiction thing, as far as like the culture within a family of what they think of it, is that some families, they have get-togethers, run the gamut of it. Birthday parties, holidays, quinceañeras, all that type of stuff, bar mitzvahs, all the typical like celebration things. And within some families, not just cultures, but within some families, it's just accepted that people are getting fucked up at it. People are getting drunk, they're smoking weed. Maybe some of the younger, like older cousins or crazy uncles are doing some harder drugs in the bathroom or stuff. But people are getting drunk and we're just drinking and driving home. We're just like, and that's what you do. Oh, remember with the uncle, he was playing horseshoes and then he threw the horseshoe in the kitchen and he was so drunk and just laughing off, and that's no big deal. For some families, oh no, you send them right home right away. You're getting wasted at my cousin's fourth, like his 2-year birthday party. What are you talking about? Like that ideal, that like mindset of families, just as far as the consumption of drugs and alcohol is so different. And that passes on. And the laissez-faire attitude, I would say, with the drugs and alcohol is the bad thing, because it leads to a lot of bad behaviors and habits, and that carries on. And that carries on for not just to families, but to generations, which then exacerbates all the other problems that occurs within it.
Definitely.
And it all starts with an attitude of like, hey, is it cool if all the aunts and uncles get fucked up over Memorial Day weekend over here? Yeah. Or the other family's like, what are you talking about? No. Just like that. Say they could even be, now, obviously, you probably see a lot of differences in economic statuses, but they could be families of different cultural,
I was thinking that too.
statuses.
I was thinking class structure, but you could have rich families that do it just as much as poor families.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard this quote once talking about genes, and you were talking about nature and
Like
nurture.
Levi's?
You were talking about nature and nurture, and this like it's not like a genetic determinism. It's not that you get the gene for whatever addiction and then you become addicted. He put it. This doctor, this neuroscientist, put it as the genes load the gun, and then environmental factors pull the trigger. And I thought that was very interesting. It's a predisposition. It's a tendency toward a genetic orientation.
Yeah.
But given a perfectly, or not perfectly, but as good of a possible childhood, maybe that gene never expresses itself in the way that those sets of genes never express themselves in a harmful way. But throw a little childhood trauma in there, throw a couple head injuries in there, throw some whatever drug use in there, and then the loaded gun goes off. And I also was thinking that as well, thinking about the past and contributions is like my not brutal, but intense drug use during my developmental years from roughly, I would say 17 to 21. When I was, we've talked about many instances on the show, doing any and every drug all the time. Yeah. There was never one substance I was addicted to, but every weekend we were doing multiple drugs.
Variety is the spice of life.
And during the school day, I would, for a while I was on morphine pills every day. I told you about my bath salt story. The first time I ever had anxiety, 6-month anxiety, general anxiety, was after a 2-day bender on bath salts.
Yeah, that was
very fucking stupid. So then I go back and I guess as I was driving here today, I was kind of thinking, listening to that End of Mental Illness book.
You should do bath salts more.
Exactly. Oh no, I was thinking if you go back in my past and you could make it so I never had a head injury and make it so I never did any drugs in those developmental years, would that at all change who I am today, my mental stability, etc.? And again, that's sort of a futile thought. It's really not worth hovering on for the reasons we already mentioned. I'm here now, no matter, I can't change the past. But it is interesting. Like, it would be fascinating if I could snap my fingers, those things never happened, and then I notice a 30% increase in my mood stability, and, one of my mental illnesses goes away or something. I don't know.
However, though, everything is correlated in this weird sense where sometimes that leads to... those bad things lead to good things. So, like, for instance, the doing of drugs, that's not like just either I was doing drugs or I wasn't doing drugs. No. That dictates who your friends were. Because you're not doing drugs with, like, the preppy, or squad of people, or, like, the goody two-shoes or the not goody two-shoes, or, like, the drama kids, or, like, or just whatever, rich neighborhood, poor neighborhood. Like, your friends, like, dictate what things you're doing. Mm-hmm. So, let's say you weren't doing drugs and doing anything like that, then we wouldn't have been friends.
Right, yeah.
And we wouldn't have, like, sparked the creative things that we would have done together. Right. So, like, these things are, like, not only are they intertwined, but they're dependent on each other, too, to where it's, like, you can't, like, sever one thing and be like, what would it be like if that was severed? It's like, no, when you cut that line, it cuts everything else, mm-hmm. too.
Yeah, and also if you didn't suffer your addictions, if I didn't suffer the mental health issues that I've had, I wouldn't have the insights into them to be able to help other people.
So the empathy.
That's another, and just the insights that are useful. Like, one of the things we get from this show, people messaging us all the time, like, your discussion on OCD was incredibly helpful and illuminating. I had somebody just message me the other day that episode I did on Rev Left about my struggles with obsessive compulsive disorder showed him that that's what he had been struggling with. So he had been struggling in the dark for so long. And then by listening to that episode, the light bulb went off. He went in, he got the diagnosis, and so now he can take a path where he can deal with it knowing what it is. And people email us all the time saying that, I'm in active recovery, or I have my sibling is an alcoholic. How do I handle this? Or, last time we did an episode on mental health, a person messaged us telling us the takeaways that they had from the episode that helped them.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's all the good, the bad, the ugly is all inexorably intertwined. You can't pull one thread out without unraveling the whole ball of yarn. And there are aspects to my personality and to your personality which are positive products of our suffering,